don't recall if they call out the square footage, but the applicant is here this evening and would probably be better to answer that question. I do not see that identified a minimum square footage on the site plan. The minimum square footage in R22, I believe, is it's 1,500 or 1,800 square feet.
Any changes on the conditions?
I do not believe that we made any changes to the conditions. I just want to double check that real quick, other than we did update the date of the site plan. So revised 9/21/23.
The last item, number 9, last condition.
And then the last condition, yes, of course, the tree shall be preserved as depicted on the plan by Harper Engineering, revised 9/21/23. So the dates of reference in condition 1 and 9 on the site plan that was provided, that has been updated. I don't believe that there was anything with regard to the renderings. Of course, we did get new renderings, but we are referring to Exhibit A, these renderings here. But nothing else was changed in that condition.
Any questions for Michael?
I do, Chairman. Michael, on condition number 7, I think this was discussed during the board discussion before we made the motion to table, but under 7, there was discussion about the benefit perhaps of incorporating that verbiage or adding verbiage that indicated that that condition would be included with the deeds for both of those sites so that the new property owners understood what the landscape buffer, what they could do and couldn't do there.
Yeah, and I apologize. That was an oversight on my part. I should have added that into condition 7. I do think that would be a good idea. It certainly couldn't hurt to place a deed restriction on the property, identifying to the purchaser that those trees along that 5-foot landscape strip at the rear have to be maintained.
Could you possibly give us some wording guidance on that, maybe?
I can, when I sit down, I'll come up with some wording.
Okay. Is that a typical inclusion in a deed item? Because trees are generally temporary. And when you include it in a deed, I hate to use the word perpetual, but that's what it is. Is that a typical?
I wouldn't say it's typical, but there are some instances where we have put in language to a condition that will be related to a deed restriction or covenant on the property, so that the purchaser is more aware of it. Of course, these conditions, if ultimately approved by council, these conditions are enforceable by the city. But by putting them in a deed restriction, when they purchase the property, they're made. It's a little bit better to get to the property owner.
And there are no other codes that will prohibit them from being disturbed other than it's on a zoning condition. I'm just trying to see if there is a precedent to be set regarding including language of preserving trees in deeds, we can get into the habit of it. Do you see any potential precedent setting here where this becomes normal for us to include preservation of trees in a deed?
Well, we may discuss that in future conditions, adding that, but I don't think that I necessarily have a concern with it. Of course, trees only have a certain age that they'll live. Once that tree dies, the expectation is that it would be replaced. But again, I'll work on some language on that, and we can certainly internally as staff talk about that further.
There was another, I think in Mr. Pollock's letter, or the time before, was the discussion about planting the trees before they start doing the land disturbance.
Yes.
So what is your feeling about that?
So typically, we do not encourage a developer to plant before construction starts because there's opportunities for those plantings to be damaged during construction. Based on the limits of disturbance on this plan, I think that there are areas where you could plant along that property line, and it's going to be so far away from the limits of disturbance that it should be okay. But again, typically we do not encourage that plantings. They're usually the very last thing that comes in.
But they have to have those planted when they do the certificate of occupancy, right? So they can't get that without having those trees planted, correct?
Correct, unless for some reason, like it wasn't a good time of year to plant trees, so in the middle of winter and it's not a good time, and you're at certificate of occupancy, we may accept a bond for the landscaping, and so they may do it after the fact. But in most occasions, yes, the landscaping will be installed before we issue the CO.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't hear any other questions at this time. We're going to ask the applicant to come forward if you wish to make a presentation or answer questions from the board. And please state your names again for the record and address.
Mr. Chairman, may I also be coming to you? My name is John Edgemedo. My name is Mario Zabalona.
And address? You have the address?
The address of the property is 10355 Woodhouse Road, Alpharetta, Georgia 30022.
Okay, thank you. Anything you'd like to add?
At this point, I think Micah basically addressed all that needs to be addressed on our side, so we're willing to take questions if there are questions to be asked.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? All right, I
have one question. So the rendering that Michael showed during his presentation, I just wanted to hear for the public record, that is more than just representative materials that are to be used. That's an actual rendering or a picture of what you would expect to be building, the actual structure.
Exactly.
So that had a 3-car garage, we wouldn't, in the future when it's built, see a 5-car garage or a 1-car garage, right?
No, sir. 5-car garages is more cost.
Okay, I'm just making sure, and thank you for providing that. I know I made a big deal about the renderings at the last meeting, but that's because I think it's important that the public be able to see a representative picture of what's going to be built next to them or near them. So thank you for providing that.
And the key word is substantially similar in condition number 2. That's always included. What is the square footage?
It's approximately about 5,000 square foot, both heated and unheated square footage.
All right.
Well, I was just going to say I appreciate you submitting the new renderings because that's very helpful, and trying to see if you could possibly save as many trees as you could along that area that was, being talked about. So, while we're all disappointed that, it just doesn't appear that you can save those trees, we do appreciate you making your best effort to try to do that.
And we have also, like Michael had recommended, we have also offered to plant those trees to make up for those ones along the property line. We've also pledged to do that as well.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to open this for public comment, and you have time to come back after public comment if you need to add anything or to rebut whatever I said during the public comment.
Thank you,
So
sir.
you may want to sit closer this time around. Anyone who'd like to speak in favor of this application, please come forward. Seeing none, anyone in opposition, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, I do have 2 cards.
Okay.
The first, Mr. Chuck Pollock.
Hello again. Thank you for considering this matter further. I'm going to limit my comments really to the supplementary materials that were filed since the last meeting. And really, I'm just going to summarize. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read what I filed in writing, but I'm just going to hit some of the highlights from that. The tree survey, which doesn't even say tree survey on it, it calls it, I think, a site plan. But within the packet of information that applicants get when they want to apply for a rezoning, it lists requirements. And on page 7 of that packet, it lists the requirements for a tree survey. There are 9 requirements. The tree survey, if we even consider it to be a tree survey, submitted by this applicant, failed 5 of those 9 requirements, more than half. That same page of the packet that the planning department gives to applicants lists the requirements of an arborist report. There are either 1 or 2, maybe more, requirements of the arborist's report that the applicant also failed. I think that alone should tell you a lot about how the applicant is approaching this process in a very amateurish manner. You saw at the last meeting, they submitted renderings that had no chance of being built on the property. Yes, they were good-looking houses, but they weren't houses for this property. The renderings they submitted now, I don't know if they could be built or not, but it looks a lot closer that they probably or maybe could. How many chances does the applicant get before they are required to do it right? We do know that the applicant failed to give proper notice when he originally filed his application. It took the planning office telling him that he needed to renotice people, and then he did. But he did it wrong the first time. So between the improper notice, the unbuildable renderings that he submitted previously, and the non-compliant tree survey and arborist report, does this applicant even know what he's doing? I say he doesn't. How could he, if the rezoning is approved, how could he possibly be trusted to build the houses properly? He's simply unqualified as an applicant, as a developer, and to have the property rezoned. He believes the rules don't apply to him, perhaps. I had previously mentioned, and I understand the Code Compliance Office is working with the applicant on a fire pit which received no permit and is built within setbacks and landscape strips on his existing property, which is adjacent to this property. An outdoor kitchen, also no permits. Cutting of trees without permits. And perhaps improvements on the house located on the property he seeks to rezone, also done without permits. He really thinks he's above the law and that the rules don't apply to him. And he's shown it with this application too. Shortcutting it, filing it very amateurish. Even on the application, there were some questions that he was supposed to answer that he didn't adequately answer. He's promised, and I guess as a condition, screening trees. However, what he didn't tell you, and what his tree survey or arborist report doesn't point out, is that there's extensive growth right up against the fence line of my property, adjacent to the property that he seeks to rezone. There are trees on that property. There are at least 5 trees on my property that are within 5 feet of the fence and certainly within 30 feet of the area of disturbance. The tree survey requirements say that those should be shown. Yet, I heard from neither the applicant nor anyone on his behalf asking to come onto my property and measure those trees. I got out there and measured them, measured how far they were from the fence, measured what their diameter was, and they should have definitely been shown. But they're not. He just doesn't care. And I've asked you to not reward him with a rezoning. There are probably half a dozen other properties on Waters Road, which are zoned AG, just like this property, that are also non-conforming under current code. They're not 5-acre parcels. Several of them are approximately the same size as this parcel or close to it. Those those lots have single-family homes, one home. Those owners didn't seek to divide their property. And believe me, some of the properties that I'm talking about have a shape that is more favorable for subdivision than this one. This is an odd-shaped property, as we all know. I just don't see why he's entitled to a rezoning. He's not made any claim that a denial of the rezoning will constitute a taking of his property, as you often see with rezoning applications. In fact, I know the other application that you're going to hear tonight, there's a very lengthy letter that came with that talking about constitutional taking if the rezoning on that property is denied. No such claim on this property. And I could tell you that although I live next door to the applicant, and we've known each other for years, and I've frequented his business, and we've been to their house for dinner, and he's been to our house for dinner, and we attend the same synagogue, I didn't know about this rezoning until he filed it. He never came to the neighbors saying, hey, I plan to do this, and what do you think about it? Can we work together? Never. Even after he filed his application, and I filed my initial opposition, and I even sent him an email opening up the door, extending the olive branch to talk about it, to work it out. Nothing. He doesn't care. He wants to do what he wants to do, just like he did with the outdoor kitchen and the fire pit, cutting the trees, and he doesn't care what anyone else thinks. I would ask that his rezoning be denied and that you urge him, I know you can't require him, but you urge him to work with his neighbors for something that works for everyone. Right now, I feel that it's being rammed down our throat, just like originally he wanted to do 3 houses. Then he changed it to 2 houses. All the other AG lots are 1 house on Waters Road, and this one should probably stay that way too, especially given the unusual shape of the property. So that's all I have for you tonight, but I thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and I appreciate your, although it was filed after the packet was put together, when the packet was put together is the first time I saw what the applicant had filed. So I was a little short on time filing a response. But I would appreciate, and I do appreciate, looking at the letter that I submitted yesterday through Michael's office. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Yes, Mr. Jim McKinley.
Hi, I'm Jim McKinley. I was the HOA president for 3 years, and I've been on the board there for 10 years. I haven't participated for several years now, and I'm not representing the board or the neighborhood tonight. I just have a couple of concerns. First concern is disturbance of the tree zone and the privacy between our neighborhood and then the proposed development next to us. Certainly you can plant new growth trees or new trees, but it's really not the same as having the same matured type tree that is there now, providing a level of privacy or degree of privacy. Also a little concerned about encroachment within the buffer zone because I'm not completely convinced that there will not be encroachment within the buffer zone. And then the only other thing that I'm really worried about or concerned about is the placement of the homes. It was tough to tell from the rendering that was shown. The initial rendering, the homes that were proposed in a manner in such that they were placed perpendicular to Waters Road. And it would be great if they actually faced Waters Road. It was very tough to tell from the picture that was shown, but really like the homes, if they are approved, to be built and placed in a manner that are consistent with the homes around them. So we don't have any homes along Waters Road that are built like perpendicular, where you're looking, you're driving down the road, you're looking at the side of the house and not the front of the house. So we'd just like to see some consistency with, regardless of what goes there. I'm not opposed to building a home there or homes there. My only concern is that it conform to the rest of the community and you keep the buffer and the older growth trees intact. So, I don't know, any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll open it up for you if you want to respond to the comments made or to add anything you'd like to add.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I would not really like to go back and forth on this towards the committee's time and everybody else's time. I would like to appreciate the opposition for the presentation and the willingness of the last neighbor to be willing to work with us in the sense of placing the houses in the right order to face the street or what have you. The only comment my client would like to make to Mr. Pollack is to pick fault in what he just said about him not willing to work with him. As a matter of fact, he was bent on doing 3 houses, but it was his proposition to have it reduced to 2 houses. We have an email to that effect from him proposing for us to have 2 houses so that he can withdraw his opposition. So I think it is really unpleasant and it's really unfortunate that he would come up here in presence of everybody to say we are unwilling to work with him. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to turn this over. Oh, you have a question?
I do, sorry. As far as the homes are concerned, are they facing, the front of the homes facing Waters Road?
Both of them are facing Waters Road, ma'am.
I'm sorry, they're facing Waters Road?
That's very correct.
Okay, thank you. I thought they were. I just wanted to make sure that that was still the case. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the other neighbor missed the last meeting, but I believe one of the requirements was to have side-facing garages.
Right.
So that
Makes it happen. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for Michael. Can I ask?
Yeah, once I turn it over to you,
Okay.
you can talk to anybody. I'll turn this over to the board now for discussion and our motion.
I have one quick question for Michael. And while he's coming, let me just say that I live in Park Brook, which is off Kimball Bridge Road, and we have an adjacent piece of property that's being cleared right now by a developer that actually was just approved by our planning commission. It's really hard after living there for 25 years to see all those trees removed. It's hard. I understand. It's not the way we want it to be, but it's something that the property owner does have a right to develop it, so we have to live within what is our city guide, our codes, and we hope that neighbors can work together to, have an understanding of being good neighbors. But I totally understand it is hard. Michael, the question that one of the speakers said was regarding that buffer. Like, I know with Toll Brothers, they have set up like the orange fencing around that actually shows the buffers and the non-disturbance. So that's required, right, before anybody does any kind of land disturbance?
Correct. So when the land disturbance permit is issued, the applicant will pick up the plans, and their next step is to put up the tree-safe fence around the property, and then they call us for an inspection, and we inspect that tree-safe fence. Once that is shown to be in the place that it's supposed to be, matches the LDP plan, the developer can then put their silt fence up, and then they do an inspection of that. Once both the tree-safe fence and the silt fence is up, the site is then considered to be open, and they can begin clearing and grading activities.
Okay, so the residents, the reason I'm asking that is so that they know they'll see those fences prior to anything being disturbed, correct?
That is correct, yeah. And if I'm going to just step over here just so I
Okay.
can show you something on the overhead. So if this site plan is ultimately approved, I think I mentioned to you earlier that the applicant showed their limits of disturbance, so this dashed line here. So in order to save the trees outside of that dash line and not impact them, the applicant on their land disturbance permit set of plans will show tree safe fence consistent with its limits of disturbance. And so that tells the developer they cannot go past that tree safe fence. So there'll be tree safe fence around this approximate area, and they will not be going into these areas of the property.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Michael, I had a question for you. Has the city of Alpharetta arborist been involved in this at all?
Yes, so the city arborist does review any public hearing that comes in. He is part of that review team that looks and reviews and provides comments. Definitely acknowledge, we don't get every single requirement that's in our public hearing application addressed in the public hearing, the application that is submitted to us. If the information is pertinent, we certainly comment to the applicant to let them know that they need to provide that information. I don't disagree with Mr. Pollack. There are some things within the applicant's tree survey and assessment that were not included, but again, the city arborist did review that information. He did go out to the property as well, and he felt that he had enough information to make a recommendation.
Would the applicant or any other citizen in this process have the ability to see what the city arborist has said or be there with them when they made an inspection of the property?
Certainly, if the city arborist went out to the property, if an adjacent resident wanted to, be part of that, if the applicant was fine with that situation with someone else coming onto their property, that would not be an issue at all. The staff all submits their comments on public hearings through our project management software, and we keep record with these public hearing files of all staff comments through the process.
And they are available to the public. They are public documents, anything submitted to the city related to zoning matters, unless it's legal in nature, would be available for public to review.
I do have one quick question. So in our packet, we had an original tree inventory because it did have all the numbers that corresponded to this. And is that the same as what we've seen on other applications, or is that considered pretty standard for a residential application?
I think it's pretty standard. I will say that one of the notes, one thing that was pointed out was that they didn't provide pictures of the tree. So if a tree is considered to be not in good condition, typically you'll see a tree survey and the assessment, and you'll see a bunch of photographs at the end of that tree assessment. And that was not included in this particular case, but again, the city arborist did review it, felt comfortable with the trees that were being removed as well as the trees that were being saved, and did verify things on the property with respect to a site visit.
Okay, thank you.
I think you were going to give us some suggested language for number 7. And while you're doing that, can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
And I think we might have spoke about this when we first heard this last month. In regards to the size of the cryptomeria that will be planted in that 5-foot landscape strip, we have code that indicates it needs to be of a certain height or caliper, is that correct?
Yeah, usually, and this is for recompense trees. So when the trees that you're using to replace for trees that you removed on the property, typically that is measured as a 4-inch caliper tree. The caliper inches are usually used for deciduous trees. Mm-hmm. Evergreen trees are usually based on a height at planting. So typically an evergreen tree replacement is somewhere between 8 to 10 feet. The city arborist, I had talked to him, and he really kind of, he thought that that was a little bit of a larger difference, somewhere between 8 to 13 feet is typical, but that may depend on the particular evergreen species of tree as well.
Okay, so from a minimum standpoint, it wouldn't be any shorter than 8 feet?
It will be at least 8
At
feet
least 8
at
feet.
planting, yes.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
And I am going to have to quickly write something here, so I apologize. I was thinking about something else.
That's okay.
Well, while he's doing that, I just wanted to discuss with the board about Francis, did you have a reservation with adding this condition to the?
No, I was just pointing out whether staff has any concern regarding incorporating language about saving trees in a deed.
Okay,
Whether that's typical.
okay,
From what I'm hearing, they don't have a problem with it.
okay, I just wanted to make sure. All right.
You can put anything on a deed. The issue is, do you want to set that precedent whereby you customarily do the same thing in the future?
Right.
So, and trees are usually temporary. They don't last forever. But I have no problem including. So, point of clarification for them to think about and advise us on whether they have any concern. I don't.
So I would propose a new sentence on condition number 7. And I just quickly wrote this so we can massage it a bit if we need to. Sentence at the end of condition 7 would read, a deed restriction shall be recorded on the property, ensuring that the trees in the 5-foot landscape strip adjacent to Waters Cove are preserved.
Does that need to be a plural because it's property?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Does it need to be, should that be plural?
On the properties? Sure. My intent was the overall property, but they would, if approved, would be subdivided, so we could say that, the properties.
Michael, excuse me, how did you start that one more time?
Sure. I'll repeat that. A deed restriction shall be recorded on the properties, ensuring that the trees in the 5-foot landscape strip adjacent to Waters Cove are preserved.
I have a couple questions on that suggested language. One is the deed restriction, should it be ensuring or indicating that the trees adjacent to Waters Cove will not be disturbed without city approval?
Indicating probably would be better.
Indicating is better, and without city approval probably is better, that there is somebody who can approve it and that they can never be disturbed, period. And the reason I suggest that is because it's going on a deed. And I think recording the deed is perpetual, so. So a deed restriction shall be provided or recorded on the properties indicating that the trees adjacent to Waters Cove will be, or within the 5 foot, will not be disturbed without city approval. you can work with that. Whoever makes the motion.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that when you get to minutia or seemingly minutia on a deed, that's a big deal. You know, you want to make it right for the person that has the property, but also some, flexibility for the city to enforce these kind of things. Because if we get too deep in the weeds or the trees on this, it can become a real sticky problem later on.
Yeah, and this is, a zoning codation, and we do impose zoning codations to approve a zoning. And you can be specific, change the buffer requirements on properties on a zoning codation and require it on a deed. Now, the question is, are you going to require to have to do that every single time on deeds when you have a zone where you want to preserve trees? I don't have a problem with it. It's just an issue of, is this a good practice? I don't know.
I would say that I hear what you're saying, and I get nervous when we start talking about, incorporating language that has to be transferred to the deed. But I've also, in my experience living in Alpharetta, have lived in properties where there were undisturbed buffers and landscape strips, and once homes started changing hands, those little details get missed, and the next thing somebody is, putting a swing set in that particular area, or doing anything that wasn't what it was intended to be. And to go down to City Hall and get the conditions for the zoning, it's arduous, and a lot of folks are coming from out of state. They're not familiar with what happens here and how things are done. So I see it as, it's a double-edged sword. I think I don't want to be setting a precedent moving forward, but on the other hand, I have seen HOAs spend hours and hours and hours of time and money trying to figure out what was the original intention of that particular strip between two different homes and that type of thing. So I'm kind of, on this one, I'm willing to kind of go there with the deed, but I think it would be more the exception than the norm for us.
And once it's memorialized in the deed, it cannot be changed through the public process. Is that correct? Mm. That's my understanding. It takes the courts to do that.
I'm not 100% on that, so I'm not sure on the answer to that question.
Because the zoning condition can be changed through the public process.
So the zoning
it's a
conditions,
deed restriction. A deed restriction cannot be changed through a public process.
That is correct.
That becomes a legal matter.
I misunderstood your initial question.
Well,
but yes, a zoning condition would only be able to be changed by city council or the board that places that condition on the property.
But a deed restriction, we are requiring the applicant to actually impose on the property, then would have to go through the legal process. Now, that opens another question, and we're just discussing here. Do you have an authority to actually do that, require deed restriction?
I know that we have done it in the past by zoning condition, that we have placed it on undisturbed buffers, with the intent of letting a potential property owner know that they can't encroach in a particular area of their yard. Sometimes we've had stream buffers on properties, which are not allowed to be on properties currently, but in older codes they were, and so there would be a deed restriction just letting the property owner know that they can't do anything in that particular area of their property. So it definitely has been done before. It's not what we always do, but there are times when that's been added as a
What
condition.
I'd recommend at this point is you place it, and Michael can confirm it with the city attorney.
Yes.
Before it goes to council.
That's certainly, we can
That's the
certainly do that.
recommendation we make to city council, and between now and then, they can clarify. And city council always has the final say about anything. They can change anything we
Yeah, and if
recommend.
the city attorney advises that it's not appropriate to add that language, then we can certainly adjust.
Okay, I think we have reached an accommodation.
Yeah.
I did have one thing on that. Since we have no motions or we're just discussing this, as a thought, instead of putting shall be recorded on the deed, it's just the 5-foot landscape strip adjacent to the Waters Cove, shall be preserved as reviewed by staff.
No, I think the best thing would be to include a condition that gets confirmed and the language can be perfected. The council will know the intent of the planning commission. We are making a recommendation. They're not bound by it. They can change the language appropriately. The discussions, I just make a comment here. Any discussions we have here informs city council about what the commission is actually thinking. And I know they watch our proceedings and they hear from staff what the recommendation was. It's more like collective knowledge of or intent of the planning commission that's communicated to council before they take action. And that's the job of the planning commission. All right, are you ready to make a motion? Somebody?
Okay. I will offer, I will offer a motion to approve Z-23-08/V-23-13 10355 Waters Road, subject to the 9 conditions actually, I don't think Michael read all 9 conditions. Do we need to read those tonight?
No, they are as recorded.
As recorded?
With whatever amendment you want to make.
Okay. And with the one exception, a change to condition number 7, and I'll do my best with what we finally decided on this. Let's see. Developer shall plant a row of cryptomeria in the 5-foot landscape strip adjacent to Waters Cove. Existing trees shall be saved in the 5-foot landscape strips along the east and northwest property lines. And we'll be adding a sentence at the end of that starts with a deed restriction shall be recorded on the properties, indicating that the trees in the 5-foot landscape strip adjacent to Waters Cove are preserved.
I'll second. He's writing.
I don't hear a second.
I'll second.
All right, a motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries, and it's going to be heard by City Council on October the 16th. That's Monday week, and Michael is going to clarify some of the things we talked about. Second item on the agenda is Z-23-11/OC Place, 4050 Kimber Bridge Road, and Michael will be presenting again.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. The next item is a request. The applicant is Castleview Homes. They're requesting a rezoning to allow for the construction of 2 for-sale, single-family detached lots on 2.5 acres, basically. Rezoning is requested from AG Agriculture to R15, minimum 15,000 square foot lots. And I do have the location map on the overhead. The property is located at 4050 Kimball Bridge Road. This is just adjacent, south side of Kimball Bridge Road, just adjacent to OC Park. The proposed density on the property is 0.8 dwelling units per acre. It's a wooded property. It is developed with a single-family home currently. Kimball Oak subdivision is located to the north. Kimball Bridge Crossing subdivision is located to the west and south. And there are unplatted single-family detached lots in OC Park to the east. The future land use designation of the property is low-density residential. This is a street view of the property. You can see the existing home on the property. And then this is the applicant's site plan, subdividing the property into 2 lots. And there's a shared drive, one shared drive, providing access to both properties. Lot 1 is the lot closer up to Kimball Bridge Road. That is just over an acre, and Lot 2 is about 1.5 acres, just under. Lot 2 does have the appearance of a flag lot, which we do not allow. However, we have made a determination that this is not a flag lot. This lot, Lot 2, does meet the minimum width requirement at the street, which in R15 is 100 feet. So that's met at the street as well as at the front building setback. So it does not qualify as a flag lot. The shared access straddles the property line between the 2 properties. They are providing a 65-foot front setback along Kimball Bridge Road, as well as the 20-foot landscape strip. And then there are tree saves depicted along the west, south, and east property lines. So this applicant has provided limits of disturbance on the property, which is generally this line here. So inside these areas, the trees are being saved. These represent the areas where the trees would be cleared in order to construct the new home. Stormwater on these properties will be addressed individually on each lot. The applicant has spoken to our stormwater engineer, who has indicated that the full stormwater requirements will apply if the new or replaced impervious area on each lot is 5,000 square feet or more. So the applicant is aware of that. The applicant did provide some inspiration renderings. This is one of the renderings that they provided, and this is the other. They depict brick and stone as the materials. The garages will not face the street. And these homes that they're showing are two-story over basement. They're approximately 4,000 to 6,000 square feet. And the applicant indicated in their application that these would range from 1.6 million to 2 million. Of course, looking at the review criteria for a change of zoning or rezoning, we believe that the zoning proposal would be suitable as it relates to the use and development of adjacent and nearby properties. These lots proposed here are much larger than lots in surrounding and nearby subdivisions. We believe that they are showing tree save areas throughout the site so that there wouldn't be an adverse effect to the natural environment. The future land use designation allows for the use of R12 and R15. The applicant is asking for the R15 zoning district, so we believe that they are limiting their impacts to public facilities and services with their request. And the applicant did provide a citizen participation report. They indicated that no comments were received, except for the comments that they received at the Community Zoning Information Meeting. That CZIM meeting was held on September 13th of this year. There were several people signed in on the sign-in sheet, but they did not leave any comments. Now, the applicant, as part of their citizen participation report, did outline their conversations with residents at the CZIM, and they indicated that the three main comments that they received were a desire for landscaping between the shared driveway and the homes to the west in the Kimblebridge Crossing subdivision, a comment about stormwater management, and the length of construction. With that, staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request subject to 12 conditions, and I will go through the conditions quickly. The condition 1 is the site plan specific condition rezoning to R15 and tying it to the Earth Design Engineering LLC site plan dated 8/21/2023. Condition 2 is the home elevation and material condition tying to Exhibit A home renderings. Condition 3 identifies the landscape strip requirement along Kimblebridge Road. Condition 4 identifies the streetscape improvements needed along Kimblebridge Road, sidewalk and planter, as well as decorative pedestrian lighting. Condition 5, developer shall plant trees along each side of the new shared driveway. So similar to, we're treating that shared driveway almost as a street. So providing the landscape strip trees along both sides of that shared drive. Condition 6, developer shall include the driveway portion on each lot in the total impervious area calculation as it relates to stormwater. Condition 7, developer shall make reasonable efforts to tie directly to an existing off-site pipe, including obtaining easements and agreements from the neighboring property. If direct tie-in is unavailable, daylighting the pond outfall pipe shall be done at least 30 feet from the property line. Condition 8 requires that exotic and invasive trees and shrubs be removed from the tree save areas. 9, unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from Kimblebridge Road or OC Park. 10, trees shall be preserved as depicted on the Earth Design Engineering LLC site plan dated 8/21/23. 11, widths and lengths of fire department access road shall comply with Appendix D, fire apparatus access roads. And 12, utility structures, head walls, etc., shall be finished with decorative stone where visible from OC Park or Kimblebridge Crossing. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Is condition number 6 necessary?
So our stormwater engineer just wanted to put that in there for clarification. It would be that it's required by code that those areas would be included in that impervious calculation.
That's why I asked.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah. She just
third
wanted
impervious.
Yeah, she asked to reinforce
To be
it.
redundant.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right, any questions?
I do. So this is the first time I've ever heard the term flag. What did you refer to?
Flag lot?
Yeah, flag lot. Okay, and because it kind of does look like a flag lot to me. So explain to me again what you consider it, why you consider it not to be a flag lot?
So we have a definition of flag lot. And
Okay.
so we looked at the definition of flag lot, and I do have that information here. So flag lot is defined in our code as an L-shaped lot whose frontage is provided by the driveway access, which ties the building portion of the property to the street. Really, what that's talking about is a situation where, so this is Kimblebridge Road, and then this is the property. This would be considered a flag lot if it was more shaped like this, and this was the only access to this portion of the property. The reason, and this does have a similar shape to it, but the reason why it's not a flag lot, because this lot, Lot 2, meets the minimum lot width at the street as well as at the front setback. So in R15, the minimum lot width is 100 feet. So they have 100 feet at this location. So therefore, we do not believe that it is considered a flag lot.
Can you put the definition again?
Yep. Here's the definition here at the top of the sheet. I also provided the definition of lot width. And then this is the provision for flag lots in our code, which indicate that they are prohibited for residential development. And then it goes on to say residential building sites must meet minimum lot width requirements at the front setback line or at twice the required front setback line for a cul-de-sac lot. And so this second sentence here, they meet that. They have the minimum lot width as measured at the front setback line.
Where did that term come from? It's like a
We've never
flag post?
Yeah, it looks kind of
Just-
like a flag, the
It's like
post
it's
with the
very close to
flag.
the end, has to be 100 feet wide. Makes sense.
Michael,
have-
I'm sorry. I do have another question, too, actually. So, can you go to the site plan? Sorry. On the site plan, how are the houses orientated? Because it does say that the decks and everything from OC Park and Kimball Bridge, they didn't show the alignment of the houses on that lot, so I'm assuming they're facing the driveways, or maybe I'll ask the applicant that question.
I would definitely bring that question up to the applicant, but it is my understanding, the homes would be oriented to, so they'd be facing Kimball Bridge Road.
Okay. And then the next question is with the shared driveway, with the lot lines going down the shared driveway, do we need any kind of language in our conditions about shared maintenance, or that's, two-house HOA? It didn't make sense, but how is that?
I don't think that we need anything in the
Okay.
conditions. We will certainly deal with that with the subdivision of the property, the plat, as well as the land disturbance
So
permit.
that's covered somewhere else?
They'll need to provide an easement since it is shared, so that there's access for both property owners over that.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't need to include it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm trying to pull up the renderings again. I'm looking at condition 2 that says garage doors shall not be facing Kimball Bridge Road. And I thought one of the renderings, it looked like the garage was aligned with the front door.
So again, the applicant did provide renderings, however, they did, and I wasn't going to really speak to this, but since we're bringing up the question, they did ask for a change to, some changes to condition number 2, which would give them some flexibility. The reason behind that is they are custom home builders, so they haven't sold either of these 2 lots yet, so they don't know the exact home that would be built on this. So they did ask for a change to the condition. I did help the applicant a little bit, just knowing what the expectations of this board and council would be. So they did ask for a change to condition 2 that would read, home elevation shall have a traditional architectural style in exterior materials shall be at least 75% brick and/or stone, similar to the submitted elevations labeled Exhibit A home renderings, which is what you see here with final approval by staff. Home shall have 3-sided architecture and materials as approved by staff. Garage doors, that should be garage singular, garage doors shall not be visible from Kimball Bridge Road. So I think, Commissioner Richard, maybe you're talking about this elevation, which does have some garages here. If this is an elevation that they chose to develop on the property, this would not comply with that condition. So the garage doors.
I see, okay. So the language in 2 would, the revised language in 2 would supersede that. Would
Yeah,
prevent that
again-
from happening, yep.
Yeah, these are just being used by the applicant for more of an inspiration. This isn't the exact elevation, but they would be subject to
The language.
whatever they build on either lot. They couldn't face the garage doors to the street.
Understood, thank you.
All right, any other questions? We're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation at this time.
I guess we'll start here. My name is Nick Griffiths. I'm with Earth Design Engineering. I put together the site plan. This is, I'll let Kurush and Mehdi introduce themselves.
Mehdi Mastata, I'm the owner of the Castleview Homes, co-owner of the Castleview Homes.
Kurush Begay, I'm CEO of the Castleview Homes.
So I guess we'll just start. I'm going to throw up some slides or some of the drawings here, if that's okay.
Now make yourself comfortable. And nice to meet you all.
I am not as comfortable sitting up here as Michael seems to be. So we'll just start with the, our site plan here. We did the public outreach meeting, and during that meeting, there were basically three concerns that were expressed. It was, there was the landscape concern. They wanted to see some landscaping in between the property and the driveway, which is kind of covered in that one condition where we have to have trees on the property. There was a concern about stormwater, which by your code, we're required to meet those, specific stormwater requirements. And then there was a third concern about length of construction, which what the applicant has agreed to do is, as far as the they don't want to go in as soon as this thing gets, if it gets rezoned and everything goes forward, they're not going to go in the next day and start clearing to put in the driveway. They're going to wait until they get their first person to purchase the property, like one of the properties, and then they'll go in and do the driveway and the initial home construction at the same time, in the interest of trying to consolidate that time of construction. This application, there was an application submitted for this property about a year ago. Originally, it was proposed as, it was proposed as a 5-lot subdivision with a roadway coming in. And after talking with staff, the applicant has withdrawn that because there were some stormwater concerns and just the number, this was basically going to require almost a clearing of the site. And they do want to try to preserve some of the trees and things like that, because there is a concern about the noise buffer from Kimball Bridge and the adjoining subdivision. So by, keeping some of those larger, older trees, it helps to protect that. So that's, if you have any specific questions for me on the site plan, I can answer those, but I know that the applicants would like to sort of talk about some of the homes that they've built in the area and things like that.
The question I have is let's say you sell one of the lots, let's say lot 2. So you're going to you would clear lot 1 and 2, or I'm assuming?
Most probably, no.
Okay.
No. We're going to just do the driveway and clear one lot, and then for the next one.
Do you have a preference of I'm just asking whether you're going to want to sell lot 1 first versus lot 2, or does it really make a difference?
No preference,
Didn't
ma'am.
matter?
No.
Okay.
No, and about the garage facing, definitely we're going to comply with the board and the, recommendation by Michael that we don't face it towards the Kimball Bridge. The rendering picture, do you have the
Yep, I sure do.
The rendering picture, if one of the houses can be towards the west instead of towards the Kimball Bridge, And if we do that, and if we just mirror that site plan, I mean the rendering plan, the garages are not visible also.
Can you turn
But
it-
these are active,
Turn it around.
Do you want me to- Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's good.
and these are active projects, actually, the rendering pictures that we are building right now. We are building 3 houses, and this is one of them, in Echelon at Cherokee County, and basically we brought the actual picture that we are executing now.
Lot 1 is the one that could be configured west, so it would be a side facing to Kimball?
Yeah, we can do that or we can turn it. If we do that, then the garages are hidden. Or we can do the side garage on the other side and hide it.
Okay. Any other, you want to add anything, or do you have anything?
I do. I'm just curious. Have you built homes in Alpharetta before?
No, it was Alfredo. I was part of the development in Granite State of the South, but it was before annexation of the Johns Creek.
Right.
And, we built a couple of houses there. I lived there, and I'm a resident of the Johns Creek and Alfredo for the last 20 years.
So this would be your first project in the city, in
City of-
Alpharetta proper?
Yes, ma'am,
Yep.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, I hear no further questions and nothing from the applicant. We're going to open it for public comments, then you have time to come back and add anything you'd like to add to your presentation. At this time, I'm going to open the meeting for public comments. Would you like to speak in favor or against? Whichever, you can come forward. You're the only one. Because the rest are staff and the applicant, so.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, how are you doing?
My name is Patrick Finn. I live in Kimball Bridge Crossing. May I have your site plan? I want to show you where I live in relationship to this development, this proposed area. You had another one with an aerial map. Thank you. All right. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. My biggest concern is, and I live right here. That's where I live. I back up to OC Park with a 50-foot landscape buffer. Adding these 2 homes makes absolutely no sense to me. I'm an architect, and what they have proposed to you looks really ridiculous in this 2-parcel plot that they want to subdivide, and it does make it into a flag lot. Who's going to take care of that side buffer lot? It's got to be somebody, so that is one concern. My next concern is it's a very difficult grade going all the way back from Kimball Bridge to the back of our neighbors on our subdivision. I mean, it is a severe slope of at least 20 feet down, and of course they're going to have to tie into our storm system in order to remove storm, and then they're adding impervious space to it. It's just, we're not going to ever allow them to ever tie in. They're going to have to get an easement to tie into our system, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to fight it to the very end, and they're not going to get it. They did propose the 5 lots last year, and of course I raised concern, where are you going to put the storm? And they said they were going to do an underground chamber system. Sure, that'll work, but it's very expensive. But they also were going to locate it right underneath the cul-de-sac. That just really didn't make any sense to me. What makes sense to me for this lot and the 2 adjacent lots to their property is selling it to the park. The park needs parking. And I will show you what I see every time I'm at the park. You see these no parking signs? Well, everybody's parking because there's no parking there. The park needs that parking. And it just really doesn't make any sense to me to put these 2 homes, which are estimated to be $1.2 to $1.6 million, in homes that are about 600,000. It just doesn't make any sense. They would be so out of place. And the orientation of these homes makes no sense to me. What else did I have concerns with? I question this developer too. Their website indicates, you did ask him, did he develop in Alpharetta? Well, on their website, it states that here's the home that we had just completed at 9720 Alma Viva Drive, Alpharetta. I went there today, took a picture of that home. It doesn't even match the home that shows the picture of the home they developed. So it raised my concern is, are they very forthright with us? And let me see, what else do I have concerns with? Yeah, tree buffer. They're taking out quite a bit of trees, and of course, I would expect they would match or at least pay for the amount of trees they remove. Street lighting, I don't know about that. I haven't seen a landscape plan yet at all. I'd like to see that as well. That concerns me as to, we're just going to put trees all over the place. That doesn't make any sense to me. I want to see that. Who's going to, maintain this shared drive? That's an odd thing, shared drive. That's just it's a long driveway that two homes are going to share. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to leave it at that, and that's all I have at the moment. The elevations of these homes that are proposed, I'm sorry, I'm an architect. I draw on Revit. I do Lumion for details, for renderings. I think that's very amateurish in my opinion, but I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes, sir.
I said thank you for your comments. Since there is no one else in the audience, I'm going to ask the applicant if you want to say anything in response to the comment or to add anything else you'd like to add. You don't have to, but you can.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Actually, Mr. Finn mentioned it before. Last year to Chris Owen, we hired Chris Owen to process this rezoning. And since Mr. Finn mentioned that City of Johns Creek wants to buy this property and add it to the park, we contacted the City of Johns Creek by Chris Owen, and they said we have no appetite and no money for it. That was exact wording for it. And beside that,
I'm going to add one more comment. Per the meeting we had last time with the other neighbors, the biggest concern was the tree buffer, road noise if we clear the lot. And if somebody puts, even assuming somebody puts a parking in there, that amplifies the road noise, and obviously the tree buffer will be gone. So that's really not what the other neighbors will be interested in. But again, and I also mentioned, if the City of Johns Creek is interested to buy this property for parking lot, we would entertain it. Have them contact us, and I'll definitely talk to them, make a reasonable offer. We're going for it. Nobody has contacted us. So.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a quick question of the applicant. Could you put the rendering up there for me, please? I don't know. I'm going to be a bit of a broken record because okay, so we have a condition that says the garages can't fit, and I know we went through that whole explain, but I'm not comfortable with it, to be honest with you. And I realize you're a custom home builder.
Yes, sir.
But this is a two-story house, right?
Yes, single family, two-story.
What if the customer wanted a three-story house with a basement? Would you build that?
No, sir. We have to. Oh, I'm sorry.
So to what degree could this?
Three-story with the basement is going to be full.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood the question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right? This is two-story.
So it's a two-story with a basement.
Right. What if someone wanted what if I wanted you to build me a three-story without a basement? Would you build it?
We're not going to build it. I mean,
We've never done it, sir.
So to what degree could this rendering be customized? Could it be customized 10%, 50%,
A lot, sir.
100%?
A lot, 100%. And the reason we just submitted that one to be part of our job, and we have actual picture. I don't know if you put the actual picture of this house that is under construction. So, but yeah, no, actual picture.
And when you say custom, I want to make sure we're not talking about the interior of the house where I want
No.
certain tile
Absolutely.
or hardwood floor. You're
We
talking the
definitely-
exterior.
Yes, if you can see, this is the house. That's not it. No, the
Other one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's Alpharetta, by the way, guys.
It says City of Alpharetta, I'm sorry, but it's the Cherokee County, so we never.
It is Alpharetta.
Yeah, it's a.
The address is Alpharetta.
Okay, so
Yeah,
this
it's a
house
city-
looks kind of like the one I just saw.
Yeah, this is
Of
exactly.
order in the room. Can continue.
So this house looks kind of like the rendering I just saw.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, I don't know, I'll just say this because we're in discussion with my fellow commissioners. I'm going to hold, and I know we have terminology around similar, but I believe when an applicant is this far into the process, with a planning commission meeting today and a council meeting for final approval in 2 weeks or whatever it is, a couple weeks, that there ought to be a reasonable rendering of what they expect to build. They ought to know what they're going to build, and they ought to be able to show us a picture of that. And it's the same thing I said to the last applicant last month, and I'm gonna be consistent. So getting back to the rendering, that's a rendering of what you're building in another part of Metro Atlanta. Did you say Cherokee County?
Cherokee County, City
Okay.
of Alpharetta.
But for the purposes of this meeting and this hearing and the public who want to know what is going to be built near them or next to them, how can you give us any kind of confidence that it will look like this?
You're absolutely right, sir. As far as, we will comply with the recommendation by the city that we will not have any garage facing to the road, for sure. But we wanted to show what we are building. That was all the elevation of the house, not about the garage only. And definitely we can, 4-car garage on the side. And I have pictures, another house exactly like that. If you don't mind, I can show to you on my phone.
So here's my challenge is
Yes, sir.
the condition 2 that's proposed, home elevation shall have a traditional architecture style with exterior materials shall be at least 75% brick or stone. You could produce a 3-story home without a basement that meets that definition.
City doesn't approve the permit, sir. We cannot, because we have to apply for the permit. And the height limitation, and many things. They won't approve it, sir. And also for the garage, they won't approve it because based on that, we are going.
So I guess I'll just net it out. Is this picture what you intend to build, except for the garage won't be facing in that direction? Is this what
Not
you intend to
exactly the
build?
same picture. No, sir.
If I may answer.
I want to make sure I heard this gentleman. Exactly the same picture?
Let me answer that a little bit differently. As Mr. Woodman said, these pictures are inspiration. These are not the exact house that will be built. We will build houses similar to this as an inspiration with the condition number 2 that we agreed to do.
If I could, I understand your frustration, but I think that inspiration is sort of a relative term, and when we're tying a condition to the rendering, it's more than an inspiration, because we're tying the condition to that. But I also think that the language indicates it's traditional architecture, so that, I'm assuming we have a definition in our code that defines what that looks like. So that is defined within code. Because of the zoning that comes with this R15 or R12, I forget which one it is,
15.
there are height restrictions. There are certain restrictions that come with that zoning. So they can't go 3 or 4 stories up. They're bound by those restrictions that are not outlined in the conditions because it's part of the code. So we had this discussion last time. It's not a requirement that exact renderings are part of the application process. And I think there's some of us that I feel that the language around 2, I do have a question for Michael about which way the houses will be facing, but I think that the language as it's written is giving enough detail as to what the expectation is. 75% brick or stone, I mean, it's not leaving a lot up for interpretation. And I appreciate you wanting to show us what you're building.
Sure.
But some of those renderings are just, obviously wouldn't fit on that lot.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
So that's
Of
adding
course.
to some of the confusion here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We are planning to build around 4,500 square feet, approximately. That's our goal. Between 1.6 to $2 million, and this house is 6,500 square feet, and the other rendering is 8,000 square feet. We were just showing that the design, and if we are, maybe we're going to use the front of the house, like a front porch or anything, but not the garage. The garage, definitely, we cannot do it, and I'm sure City of Alpharetta doesn't approve the permit if we go that route.
And I think that in condition 2, as reworded, is as approved by staff.
Right, right.
So it is ensuring that it's within the box of the code, within the box of these conditions, and allows the custom home builder side to sell as appropriately.
Yeah, and I respect that position, but I just, in Todd's simple world, if I run into somebody on the town green on Saturday and they said, hey, Todd, you approved a public hearing item and you don't even know what the places are going to look like in the front, and I can't really say with a straight face, well, I kind of know, and there's some conditions that talk about traditional style and brick and stone, and that just, I think this is exactly the same as the last hearing, and I'm not going to be able to support this.
I have a question for staff. Can we go to that? Okay. Michael?
Let me
Oh,
do
I'm
this.
sorry.
If you have no further questions for the applicant, I can turn it over to the board, and then you can ask anybody questions. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, sir, thank you.
All right. I'm turning this over to the board for discussion and a motion, and the board can ask questions to whoever they want. Sure. They'd like to.
Michael, so we don't have language that indicates the front of the home shall be facing any direction. Is that correct?
We don't, but I think it would be good to add that to condition number 2. I would recommend adding it to the last sentence, with that last sentence starting out, homes shall be oriented to Kimblebridge Road, and garage doors shall not be visible from Kimblebridge Road.
Okay. And I was speaking earlier when we were discussing the language that we have in the condition, the revised condition about traditional architecture. And I was making assumptions that we have some definition as to what that represents. Was I correct when I said that?
I think we have some definitions that help us, but we also have an architect on staff, or not on staff, a consultant that's on call that we could rely on. But again, the intent here is to give a custom home builder the ability to build a home on the property, but not knowing what their potential buyer is going to want. So we wanted to tie condition number 2 to those renderings, but not that they had to specifically construct that rendering. So the traditional style or architecture that you see in those 2 renderings, the idea is that they would be tied to that, tied to a certain percentage of brick and stone on the exterior and the other portions of that condition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, could you walk us through the process now, because there is a requirement for a final approval by staff? How will that process work?
Yes, great question. So if this is approved, there will be a condition specific to the homes, the architecture material. Once the developer has their LDP, their land disturbance permit, and they have a plat on the property, they can begin going vertical construction with the homes. That once the applicant submits that building permit for the new homes, they will be submitting a color rendering with materials labeled on that rendering, as well as home plans, and that will be reviewed by staff against these conditions. If staff is not able to make a judgment call on it, we may reach out to our on-call architect consultant for their opinion. But we verify that the home that is in that building permit matches or meets the condition that has been placed on that property with respect of the look of that home.
So, but you can also make a judgment call as to if the style of the home is in concert with all the other homes in our surrounding areas, such as the Toll Brothers homes and the homes adjacent to them in Kimball Crossing. I mean, you can make that judgment as well, too, right?
Whether staff makes that judgment call or our on-call consultant gives us advice and opinion on that, we would do that, yes.
Okay.
The idea would be that these homes fit in with the surrounding homes.
And with respect to the stormwater that was mentioned, that's handled through the LDP process.
Correct. Yes. So the land disturbance permit, there'll be a hydro study, hydrology study, and stormwater will be addressed with the land disturbance permit. As I mentioned during the presentation, if there's new impervious or on the property exceeding 5,000 square feet, that's going to trigger the full stormwater requirements. So we don't know what that looks like yet until the applicant gets further down the road.
Hey, Michael, could you explain, sorry for my ignorance on this one, but on number 7, at the second sentence, if direct tie-in is unavailable, daylighting the pond outfall pipe shall be done at least 30 feet from the property line. Is that daylighting? I'm not familiar with that term.
Yeah, so we've been adding similar conditions on properties, and I think this really kind of came up with the Toll Brothers Kimball Bridge development. The idea is there is a storm pipe on the adjacent property, so within this adjacent subdivision. So there's potential for this developer to connect into that storm pipe, but they have to get the approval of the adjacent neighborhood. If they're not able to get that approval to directly connect in, what the condition goes on to say is that daylighting of that pipe, so for example, if we had a stormwater facility at this location, approximate location of the property, and that water outfalls or comes out of that facility, that will have to be set back 30 feet from the property lines. Typically, that would occur through some of the means that could occur would be a device such as a level spreader. So the idea is to kind of spread the release of that water over a greater area so that it's not just one stream.
Thank you.
I have another question, if no one else does. Michael, Mr. Finn, one of the questions or comments that he made about the fact that this was not technically a flag lot in regards to how our code reads, he mentioned his concern about who's going to take care of the side buffer. I think that's what I understood his concern with, and I'm not really sure I understand.
There are no buffer requirements on this property. So we do not, the city's code does not require buffers between residential and residential. The only thing that would be required, so you have a landscape strip, which is aesthetic,
Right.
not screening, that is required, a 20-foot landscape strip that's required along Kimball Bridge Road. And then the code also requires a 5-foot landscape strip around the perimeter of the property where it does not abut a road. If they are saving trees in those areas, obviously you're not going to plant a landscape strip. So wherever they're saving trees, they wouldn't have to plant. But for example, I believe in this area, the limits of disturbance go all the way to the property line. So in this area here, they would be required to plant the 5-foot landscape strip. But there is no buffer.
And the property owners are responsible for maintaining the landscape strips.
They are. They're code requirements, so if
Right.
they don't maintain those, we can enforce maintenance of those.
Okay. Would you mind repeating, because I didn't write it down, I thought my neighbor might have written it down, but she didn't. The recommended addition to condition number 2 as far as the additional sentence is concerned?
Sure. So I would just recommend adding on to the beginning of the last sentence in condition 2. It could be placed other places, but I think that would make sense. And that would read, homes shall be oriented to Kimball Bridge Road, and garage doors shall not be visible from Kimball Bridge Road.
Thank you.
I would add on to the end of that sentence, as approved by staff. I think that's something, both of those conditions, that staff should look at and approve.
Thank you.
And Michael, I do have one question, just because it wasn't shown on the site plan. So on Kimball Bridge, this is offset from the Toll Brothers property entrance, correct? It's not, I know there was a light discussion and all that. It's offset from it, so.
This is the subject property, and this is the Toll Brothers Kimball Bridge property here.
And I know there was some notice that Johns Creek's looking at doing some road improvements along that road. Is there going to be a center lane through there all the way, or do you know?
I'm not aware of particular road improvements there. We did reach out, we did send this to Public Works to see if there was any need to secure any right-of-way, and they came back that there was not.
All right. You're under the motion discussion phase, so anyone want to make a motion?
I'll go ahead. I'll do it. I got it. I'll make a motion to approve Z-23-11 OC Place / 4050 Kimball Bridge Road, subject to the following conditions. The 12 conditions as read by Mr. Woodman, with the exception, changes to condition number 2. And condition number 2, sorry, shall read, home elevations shall have a traditional architectural style and exterior materials shall be at least 75% brick and/or stone, similar to the submitted elevations labeled Exhibit A, home renderings, with final approval by staff. Homes shall have 3-sided architecture and materials as approved by staff. Homes shall be oriented to Kimball Bridge Road, and garage doors shall not be visible to Kimball Bridge Road as approved by staff. And that is the end of my motion.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion fails.
I would offer a motion to
Another
defer. I'd offer a motion to defer.
Second.
I think you have to offer a motion to reconsider first.
I'll offer a motion to reconsider.
Second.
Motion to reconsider has been made. All in favor? Please raise your right hand. Motion carries. Now, now you can discuss it again.
For the record, I support that last motion. I didn't understand what we were voting.
Now, the order is if a motion is made and passed, you can reconsider it immediately. A motion has to be made to reconsider and has to be supported by the majority in order for it to be open again for consideration in the same meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to defer Z-23-11/OC Place/4050 Kimball Bridge Road to the Planning Commission meeting as scheduled in November 2023.
Second.
Motion has been made to defer to the next meeting and properly seconded. Any further discussions? The first question I would ask is, what is the board expecting to see in the next meeting so we can give staff and the applicant direction as to what the reason we want to defer it?
Yeah, I'll just say I've bought 3 custom homes in my life, and maybe and they were actually, well, let's just say they were consistent with this price range. I'm just not used to it being a 100% clear slate, where basically you start with the dirt and you can choose anything you want, just as long as it has brick or stone or a traditional style. So I'd like to see a rendering that, on the interior, it's completely different. In fact, we had a hearing for a more custom condo project than even these homes, I think, or as custom, and we got representative renderings of the exterior. I gotta believe you guys have a shell exterior that you have in mind when you come up with your price range and your square footage range. It can't be 100% blank slate as far as the shell. So for the purposes of this hearing, I'd like to see what that basic shell is that I agree could be customized. The garage doors could be moved to the back. But, in a simple world, like I said, if we walk up to the town green, I feel like I'm adding no value if I approve things when I don't even know what they look like. And when the applicant says, this is not what we're going to build. So there's got to be some type of shell that you guys have in mind that could be customized, and I'd like to see that as a representative rendering so people in the community know what's going to be built next to them or near them.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add that even though one resident of an adjacent neighborhood isn't speaking for everyone, I do think there's some concerns that maybe the builders could address with the other neighbors to make sure this goes a little more smoothly, and that's what I'd like to see next time.
I voted for it, so I'm not, I'm just trying to not have an application go to council without a recommendation of approval or denial. We've had that happen before, and it was, we were coached. I mean, we had our city clerk come and explain to us that we needed to have a recommendation. We're the recommending body. And so I'm trying to get to a point where we have a recommendation. But I felt comfortable with what I saw tonight from the applicant. And so I respect the feedback from my fellow council, planning commissioners, but I was 100% with the changes that we made to condition 2. I felt comfortable and confident with the application. So there isn't anything from me that I need to see in the next round. Thank you.
And then just to reiterate what Commissioner Richards just said, we are a recommending body. We facilitate a public process. And when a motion to approve is made and fails, there is no recommendation to City Council. If it's a motion to deny, that's a recommendation to deny it. So I believe you can make as many motions as you can until we make a recommendation or defer an application. In an abundance of caution, I wanted to open it up again instead of just continuing to make motions. So the important thing is that the board has directed you to tighten up a little bit and come back the next time where you have more support to work with your neighbors and come up with a product that's acceptable and for everybody's benefit. It has not been denied. The decision is to defer it. Well, I've not asked for a vote yet, but I assume, I see the direction we're going is for you to go back and discuss it with your neighbors and come up with renderings that are more clear. It's important for the board and for council, for that matter, to know what they are actually approving. With that,
and I just want to say, too, that to tie into Commissioner Richards' comment, recommending to deny is a pretty severe recommendation from this group that has very detrimental impacts on the applicant. It pushes your time frame out significantly and impedes everybody getting to their end game, which is a high-quality project that gets approved. And you were here in the public during the last hearing. We had a very similar situation last month where they came back and they had appropriate renderings this time, and we approved it. I think it was unanimous. So I'm about getting it right. And I think if we wait till the next Planning Commission meeting, I'm optimistic that we can get what we need, at least what I need, to make a decision, and we can make that yes or no recommendation to council and move on. So it's not the end of the world. It's just, certain commissioners need more information to make an adequate decision.
Just to clarify, if we were to recommend denial, it doesn't change the time frame. It goes to council with a recommendation to deny. So I just want to make sure they understand that. A denial from us does not impact it at all. So, yeah.
Thank you.
all right. When is the date of the next meeting?
Did we vote?
No, we haven't. I want to make sure we include.
Oh, got it.
November 2nd. So the deferral is for the November 2nd meeting. I see them conferring, so I'm allowing them a moment.
So we will need to re-advertise this applicant, and so we need to get that over to the newspaper. To get it in, meet the 15-day advertisement that is required prior to the public hearing, I would have needed to have that ad to the newspaper on Wednesday of this week. It is likely that they will accept a late ad for me if I ask tomorrow morning, but I can't make that promise that they will accept that ad in order to advertise it in time.
So does it need to be deferred to the December meeting?
I don't know that I would recommend doing that. I think there's a good possibility that the newspaper will accept the late ad. I'd hate to push the applicant off to December. If you defer them to the next meeting and I can't meet advertising, it just will go to the December meeting.
Understood.
Or we could have a second meeting in November. Seriously, yeah. I mean, I'd hate to.
No, that's fine. They'll know what to do. I want to address, you raised your hand. Once, I close public comment, the board can ask you questions. Because we are deferring it, you can talk to staff and the applicant and make sure that whatever, because we're asking them to come and discuss it with you. All right, I'm going to call a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. All right, the next thing will be a briefing from staff on the strategic or economic development strategic plan. This is a very
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you all tonight to present the Economic Development Strategic Plan as approved by City Council on their September 25th council agenda. To kind of give some further context to the Economic Development Strategic Plan itself, think of it as working somewhat similar to a city comprehensive plan update with an economic development lens and narrowly tailored focus. It's supposed to be done every 5 years. This was originally got its kickoff in 2020 under my predecessor. And at the time, it was shortly before the COVID pandemic. And once the pandemic hit, both staff and the consultant selected decided that it was best to temporarily table the project, thinking that the pandemic might alter many of the findings. And I think 3.5, 4 years after that, I think many of us know likely that would have been the case. So we reinvigorated the plan about 12, 18 months ago, working with RKG and Associates, our chosen selected consultant. And as a part of this plan, we impaneled a steering committee that consisted of civic leaders, business owners, residents, staff, to come up with a kind of overarching guiding principle for economic development for the next half decade. And what I'm going to present to you tonight is some of the slides that the consultant actually presented before the council last week. And I want to preface, before we kind of get into some of the details of this, the consultant kind of had the ability to have a 30,000-foot view, so to speak, to be able to make recommendations that he thought and the steering committee thought made the most sense in terms of economic development. It's not to say that everything in this list, even though it is adopted by the council, has to be implemented. And it does not mean that the council and staff and what have you don't have to consider other things besides economic development that are important to the community. So just want to preface that before we get started. So some of the initial final economic development goals that we and the steering committee and the consultant came up with was to continue to attract new professional and technical service firms to Alpharetta. I think we all know Alpharetta has a history of attracting high caliber talent, from the fintech industry, especially in the technology ecosystem, technology city of the South. And it's not to say that we should move away from that. We should continue to build on that brand, but also diversifying the city's employment sectors and diversifying the economy is only a net benefit for the community. As I think we know, coming out of the pandemic, the workforce was altered, how people work is altered, and in particular, technology firms had a little bit easier time transitioning to a hybrid or remote world than some other professions. So it's something to consider as a part of some of the goals and considerations that the plan has come up with. Strengthening the connection between businesses and training providers. So think of the technical assets that the city possesses. We have Gwinnett Technical College as a campus, of course, off Old Milton Parkway. Georgia State has a perimeter campus at Brookside. We have Tech Alpharetta, which of course is a tremendous economic development asset to the city. And so it's strengthening those resources, making them more readily available to the business community, making them more aware of some of the existing offerings and building on some of those existing offerings. And another thing to note too, create dynamic employment centers through place-based strategies. So I know that this commission in particular is probably uniquely aware of LCI plans and such. We had the South Main LCI. Currently, we're working on the Windward LCI in partnership with the City of Milton and the CID, and we are actually having a community meeting on November 15th at the Hilton in Windward. And this is to focus on some of those, making a greater sense of place, which is only more attractive to employers. So focus and stay focused. And what the consultant meant by this is staff is in the Economic Development Division consists of 3 folks, Director Cook, myself, and Charlotte Christian on our team. So it's taking our talents and what we have learned as a team to do best and perfecting those and using us in kind of a strategic manner. So taking what we do good and making sure that we are even better and perfected at that versus focusing on a multitude of projects or what have you, focus on what we do best. And maximize our partners. Again, Tech Alpharetta, I would say Director Cook and I consider an extension of our team, tremendous asset, as well as the corporate community that exists in the community. One of the things that I think is most powerful is Morgan Stanley actually is one of the spearheading leaders in the Innovation Academy STEM mentoring and STEAM mentoring program in partnership with Tech Alpharetta. And the purpose of this was to provide high school age girls at Innovation Academy the ability to connect with industry professionals, female industry professionals already working in the STEM field, and be able to show that they can work towards this, they can be a part of this, and that this often male-dominated field is attainable to young girls. And so making those kind of partnerships even more readily marketed and available is only going to benefit the community. And finally, residential communities and dynamic employment centers can coexist, meaning dynamic employment centers such as Avalon or the office space that exists in downtown, or incoming developments such as Continuum can continue to succeed along with residential communities. And here just kind of depicts different nodes of focus, and I think, well, those of us locally know some of these by different names, but you see the North Point Mall area in the existing city center in Avalon, Continuum, which of course is coming online, focus on the Brookside area as well. I know staff is working hard on with the Brookside small area plan and some other areas to kind of invigorate that area, make it more of a walkable sense of place and things like that. So this kind of shows the connection between those roadway corridors and such. And this shows the level of density, showing with the highest level of density on the North Point Mall. Knowing at some point that a plan will be put forth on the North Point Mall that meets the standards of the city, and that would be a little bit higher density site given the size of that site.
Lance, can I just ask you a quick question?
Of course.
The Commerce pink bubble,
Yes, ma'am.
is that representing like Northwind Summit? What is there?
So that's going to be northern edge of North Point Parkway, just south of where it meets Old Milton Parkway. And so a lot of that currently is suburban office. So that would be on the east side of Georgia 400. So it would be,
Okay.
yeah, a little bit east of where Northwind Summit is.
Got it. Okay. So there's a lot of is that Class B office, or is that?
That would constitute as Class B.
Class
So it's
B,
kind of
okay.
older 80s, 90s suburban
Right.
office.
Got
Yep.
it. Okay, thank you.
So invigorating that area. And as you can see, that green line to the right of it depicts the Big Creek Greenway, which of course is a huge asset for that area. And of course, employers are very interested in walkability more and more. So that's a resource that can be further tapped. The Development Authority, I know, is keenly aware of it, and staff is working with them to come up with some amenity-focused grants that can be run through the Development Authority. So it's kind of building on those kinds of things to encourage corporate entities in the community to kind of tie in some of this existing walkability or green infrastructure.
Right. Thank you.
Of course. So kind of strategies, retaining and growing the businesses we already have. I would say among the most important things that have been communicated to me by the mayor and council are to be a resource to the business community that is existing within the city of Alpharetta. We regularly host retention visits with the mayor and some of the elected officials where we go to small, mid, and large-sized companies within the community. We meet with them. Oftentimes, if they're gracious enough to show us what they do and show us their facilities. And honestly, we oftentimes end it with just a casual conversation in a conference room of how the city can be a resource, how we can further partner, if there's any information that we can share with them. So just making sure that they feel heard and that they know that the community, cares that they've invested in our community. It's low-hanging fruit to continue to encourage the companies that are already here to stay here. Business recruitment and attraction, proactively market potential new corporate residents. Of course, that's a huge focus of ours as well, and we lean heavily also on our state and regional partners on that. Asset development strategies on best positioning the physical assets in the city, and again, this is kind of tapping into existing infrastructure that's here, such as the Big Creek Greenway, the Alpha Loop, a great quality of life, things of that nature. Economic development toolbox, kind of strengthening some of the incentives and such that the city offers. I kind of touched on that a little bit in terms of the amenity grant that we're working with the Development Authority on. That's not been passed yet, but we're hoping that it will be in the coming months. Outreach and communication. Charlotte on my team, the primary job description for her is marketing, so keeping up a regular cadence on social media, on the city's city activities, any kind of recognition a company within the city might be getting, things of that nature. Priority actions, again, business retention and expansion. And a heavy area of focus for the consultant for us was continue to strengthen our partnerships with the Georgia Department of Economic Development, Metro Atlanta Chamber, and Georgia Power. These state and regional partners are integral in the economic development process in the state of Georgia. Oftentimes when we're looking at mid to large-sized companies that are looking to come into the community, their first call is going to be the state. So cultivating those relationships with my counterparts at that level helps keep Alpharetta top of mind when they're looking at coming and touring specific communities within the state. And asset development, continue to develop and update small area plans such as the LCI. We did finish a technical assistance panel with the Urban Land Institute of Atlanta back this spring, and they're actually coming to City Council to present on the November 13th agenda. Of course, we'd love to invite anybody who would like to attend that. And that focus was on the Windward Corridor, and specifically the Windward Terrace area specifically. So that was to create a greater sense of place, how to tie into the Greenway and other infrastructure that's existing in that area, and what to kind of do with kind of this aging suburban strip mall and office park, and how to reinvigorate it for the future. So continuing those plans. And again, expand investments in staffing to accomplish the more stated goals. That really means taking the assets that we have and what we do well and improving on them and focusing on them. And finally, create a business advisory board, which I think this would be something that I would be really excited to kick off, is to kind of grow us as an asset to the business community, invite different practitioners from different sectors in the economy to come to City Hall, or we will go to them and just kind of hear their concerns and their needs and what the city could do for them.
Turned that off and forgot about it. If you can go back, a slide back, 2 things I wanted to point out. On the business recruiting and attraction, that is so important, trying to fit businesses with what is available in Alpharetta. And in strategic planning, if you're able to get ahead of development and be able to guide it where you want it to go, you're way ahead of the curve. The next thing, the next slide, if you can turn to that. Next slide, the one that you're on. Oh, sorry.
Oh, back, yep.
There. The business advisory board is a very good idea.
Absolutely. I completely agree, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I just want to point those.
Who would be like on that board? Like, what would you do it like an advisory board for the entire city, or would you do an advisory board perhaps per like North Point and continue? I mean, by the group, or what's your?
Sure, Commissioner. I think that's a great question. I think that at the current time, I haven't gotten to think through exactly how that would work, if I'm being honest. But I do think kind of, my initial thought would be we could potentially scale it specifically to certain types of industries. That could be a resource, whether it be small businesses or, a life science roundtable or, things like that. And I do think potentially geographic areas as well. Already that we have a partnership with the Alpharetta Chamber on the downtown initiative, being a resource for downtown businesses. I think that there's ways in which we could make sure that we're, communicating a bit better to some of the other businesses in different parts of the city, such as North Point or Windward or what have you. So I do think some geographic specific focuses would be great, and I think that the businesses in those parts of the city, I think, would be very appreciative of that. So I think that would be a good place to start.
I agree with Francis.
The composition and the mandate is not the right word, for an advisory board. How is it going to be composed? Who appoints who? What is their role? That's something I'd be interested in to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy as staff kind of starts putting this together to be able to stay in contact with this board and keep you all apprised of any future plans that come about with respect to this. Mr. Chairman, kind of my initial thoughts on that, on who would serve as, maybe somewhat similar to how we impaneled the advisory board for this plan, so to speak. It would consist of a spectrum of individuals from business owners, civic leaders, members of staff, what have you.
And that makes sense. Yeah. This is, I mean, I like it. You have the goals and you have strategies and you have actions to support the goals and the goals, strategy and then strategy supporting the goals. And there is a lot here to digest, and I haven't had a chance to read the whole document yet. In fact, I asked Ms. Kathy Cook to get a PDF, and it was included in the package. I haven't been able to download it yet, but I think it's something good for us to read and digest and understand and ask questions on. Because each one of these goals and strategies and actions is a lot to expand on it and to implement it. And I assume this is a 5-year plan.
It is, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
It's going to move very quickly.
Yes.
So just to, I don't see anywhere where it actually references that it's a 5-year plan. Did I miss that?
It does not specifically in the slide deck itself, Commissioner Richard. It has been city policy previously that it be a 5-year plan. Now, I will stress that it has gotten out of cadence. The last formally adopted plan was in 2011. And I believe in 2016, there was initial plans to reinvigorate it, but that was about the time there was some staff changes in economic development. And so 2019 or so, my predecessor started the current plan, which is before you all tonight. And of course, the pandemic put a pause on that. So we are at a cadence. I think that, if the directive of the council and staff determination is to stay on that 5-year cadence, we would expect to be doing this again in 2028 or so.
Okay.
Is it published yet? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say, since it was paused during COVID and then restarted post-COVID, so is it fair to say that the recommendations and the analysis is reflective of the new COVID environment, specifically as far as office is concerned?
Absolutely, Commissioner Richard. Pretty much, only thing that had really gotten started was some initial kickoff meetings in early 2020. Almost no data collection was done prior to the pausing of the plan. So pretty much everything that's included in this plan that would have been affected by the pandemic is all new data. The consultant regularly stayed on top of office vacancy data, as does staff. So many of the recommendations that come out of this certainly have been affected by the pandemic. I think a lot of the placemaking and walkability, that's even more important than it was before COVID. I mean, that's not to say that office users didn't like those amenities before the pandemic, but when you're trying to entice office workers back into the office, if it is a corporate entity, it is much easier to attract them into places that are walkable, have assets to, in terms of going out to lunch and things like that. We see that in our office vacancy currently. I mean, our lowest vacancy is downtown in Avalon, and those are doing quite well. You would not know that there's an office problem compared to other areas that aren't as amenitized, and even anything around those areas. So across from Avalon, in the Kimball Place area, that's doing quite well. Just that halo effect of walkability and assets, it's doing a lot. So a lot of these recommendations certainly were doubled down after the pandemic.
I was going to mention strategic plans by nature are 3 to 5 years, but I think it's good to indicate in the plan, if it's not published, 5-year strategic plan. That way it's understood. Right. You want to put deadlines, milestones on plans so action can take place. If it's something that's open-ended, usually plans are put on a shelf and there is no milestone, there is no way to say we are moving forward. That's the only suggestion I would make. Although, strategic plans are usually very short in duration. 5 years is actually very long for a strategy. Business plans are 5 years.
It's a great point, Mr. Chairman, and actually we have a few slight edits, nothing to change the substance that the consultant is working on before it's finally published. I mean, it is a finished document, but before we're 100% ready to say it is done for the time being. So I think that is something certainly we could approach with him, is just adding in that language that it is indeed a 5-year plan per the city's standards.
Yeah. That will help, readers know this is not an open-ended, whenever we get to it, it's going to be within the next 5 years. Usually 3 is ideal for strategic plans and 5 for business planning. So That's the only comment I would make so far before I read the whole document.
Thank you. Point well taken.
I thought it was very interesting read, thank you. I
Well
did not
done.
read the whole thing, I read this, the presented version.
Thank you, absolutely. Any more questions for staff?
All right, we are almost 9 o'clock.
Well, I know you didn't really have to present this to us, but it was really helpful to hear it. So we appreciate you taking the time tonight and, you know, bearing with us through some of our applications to, you know, talk to us tonight. So thank you.
And then this was Commissioner Richards' recommendation, which was very timely. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for the invitation to speak before you tonight.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned until November 2nd.